Hi, my name is Paul Ahrens, and today we're going to be discussing the System Management Controller and how to use it effectively while troubleshooting. I'm also joined by two of my colleagues.
Jeff Whitman, manager of the System Management Controller Group.
And I'm Jeremy Sheffy from Field Service Quality Engineering.
Great. Let's take a look at our agenda. We're going to start by defining what the SMC is. Again, the SMC is the System Management Controller, but that requires some more justification, I suppose. We're going to take a look at what the SMC controls or its functions, related symptoms to an SMC that may be experiencing problems, SMC in the use of inline troubleshooting, more importantly things that we should do before we do an SMC reset, how to do an SMC reset on newer Intel machines, a resource that you can look up further information if you're interested, and of course we'll end with the Q&A session. As a reminder, this is a live webcast, so we can actually receive your questions in chat during the webcast, and I do encourage you to send your questions in early so that Jeremy can prepare them for the end Q&A session. Great, let's move on. First off, what is the SMC? By definition, it's a low-level management subsystem in Intel-based Macintoshes. I'll say that again because, again, that can be a little bit confusing. It's a low-level management subsystem in Intel-based Macs. Essentially what that means is the SMC is responsible for low-level communication in your Mac during all three power states. When your Mac is off, powered on, or asleep, your SMC is still active and having an effect on your Mac. So while using it during a proper troubleshooting process, you can find yourself avoiding costly and unnecessary hardware repairs and saving yourself lots of time while troubleshooting. So some of the SMC functions that you might be familiar with are related to system power. For example, listening for the power button response. The Hall effect sensor in the Intel portables, which is responsible for knowing when the lid is closed or open. That event is tracked by the SMC. Battery management. The battery status indicator lights, something oftentimes overlooked on Intel portables. When you look on the side on the new unibodies, those lights that tell you the battery status, those are also governed by the SMC. Battery charging, and of course a change in power state. What I mean by that is if it's charging and then you remove the MagSafe adapter, that incident is managed by the SMC as well. In addition to power-related control, the SMC manages the thermal controls inside the Mac, temperature sensors and fans, for example. The sudden motion sensor inside of a hard drive is also managed by the SMC. Ambient light sensing, right? So when you dim the lights in the room, those sensors that are responsible for engaging your backlit keyboard and also dimming your backlit display, those are all managed by the SMC. The SIL, right, we're becoming more and more familiar with that with some of our diagnostics on our previous webcasts, stands for our status indicator light, and that is also managed by the SMC. And then on our newer iMacs, the 27-inch to be exact, when you switch in and out of external display mode when using a mini DisplayPort connection, that handoff is also managed and controlled by the SMC. So let's take a look at some problems that might be related to an SMC that needs to be reset or troubleshot. If you're experiencing any kind of fan problems, as soon as you turn your Mac on, the fans spin up to full speed. Or even after boot, your fans spin up, but upon checking the activity monitor, you can't seem to find any processor strain that would account for the machine needing fans to be run up. That could be indicative of an SMC problem. In addition to this, virtually all aspects of lighting in your Mac are controlled by the SMC. Again, that includes the backlight, that includes the battery indicator lights, your backlit keyboard, and your status indicator light. On the slide here you can read that if they're behaving incorrectly. You might be wondering what that means. Well, if a light remains on when it should be off, or when the lights come up in a room and your backlight keyboard turns on instead of the opposite effect, that could represent an SMC that needs to be troubleshot and or reset. Some power-related symptoms that you may want to think of as far as troubleshooting the SMC are no response to the power button. So we do see quite a few technicians checking in Macs for dead unit with no power, maybe even troubleshooting logic board or power supply failures, when in reality it just needs an SMC reset to recognize the power button being pressed. Portable Macs that don't respond correctly when opening or closing the lid. When you close a lid on a portable system, you expect it to go to sleep. If for some reason it's staying on, what you'll find is that an SMC may resolve that problem, an SMC reset, excuse me. If the portable doesn't sleep correctly or wakes from sleep unexpectedly, these could also be SMC related. If the battery is not charging correctly, rather the status isn't reporting correctly. So you know your MagSafe is plugged in, you're relatively certain your battery is charging, but the OS tells you that the machine is plugged in but not charging, or that the battery may not be found. Those are symptoms that an SMC reset may be able to resolve. And of course, lastly for power, we've got the MagSafe LED itself. When it's charging, the expected state is for that LED to be orange, and when it's charged, we expect it to be green. If you're getting any result other than that, that could be necessary, that might require an SMC reset. So let's take a look at some more symptoms. This one's more rare and you're less likely to see it. However, in rare circumstances, an SMC can be responsible for poor system performance. So if you check Activity Monitor and there's no high levels of processor activity, but your Mac is responding very slowly, in certain rare troubleshooting circumstances, an SMC reset could actually improve that system performance. On video-related problems, if your videos is either not switching as expected, if you plug in an external display or an external device to your iMac, you would expect that to switch over. And if it doesn't, you might need to do an SMC reset. If it's switching unexpectedly, so if you're using your iMac as an external display and it kicks back over to the internal video and back to external, that could absolutely be necessary of an SMC reset. So there are some things that we'd like you to attempt before jumping to an SMC reset. I observe a lot of technicians in the field, and I see SMC resets get done as what I like to call voodoo troubleshooting. These are things that the tech resets the SMC just because. So there's some things that might look like an SMC problem, when in reality, one of the following fixes would have actually solved the problem for you. So let's review those now. First off, you should force quit any applications that aren't responding. After that, you should sleep and wake the system. Again, if you're getting backlit keyboard problems or the SIL isn't responding correctly, sometimes just sleeping the Mac and then waking it back up will resolve those problems. Of course, a restart, and of course, shutting down the system. I find that in the field, that's probably the #1 overlooked troubleshooting step. So I'll see techs shut the machine down to reset the SMC, as we'll discuss here. As we'll discuss here in a second. However, they think they fixed the problem with the SMC when in reality it was just a reboot of the system that was required. So once you've done these things and you're certain that an SMC reset may be the next course of action, you should still do some more troubleshooting for the battery and the power adapter if the issues are related to those. As a tech, you may be familiar with the process of reseating. Essentially what we're asking you to do is to reseat your MagSafe at both ends and to reseat your battery at both ends. So in other words, unplug your MagSafe adapter and plug it back in. Try a known good outlet. Remove the battery from your system and put it back in. All of these things could resolve problems that might mirror themselves as an SMC related problem. Once you've done all of those things, you may need to do an SMC reset. So on portables with removable batteries, what you need to do is remove all sources of power. So that means remove the removable battery, disconnect the MagSafe adapter, and hold the power button down for 5 seconds. Once you release the power button, place the power back in and turn the unit on. You will have successfully reset the SMC. On portables without removable batteries, the process is significantly different. You actually need to leave the MagSafe adapter plugged in. You'll want to shut the Mac down. It's very important that you do this before an SMC reset, as it may cause the machine to reboot and you may lose work that you're working on. So shut the Mac down, plug in the MagSafe adapter, and you're going to hold down the following key combination on the left-hand side of your keyboard. You're going to hold down Shift, Control, and Option, and then push the power button and release all the keys simultaneously. That will do an SMC reset on portables with integrated batteries. On desktop systems, the reset process is very similar to portables with removable batteries. In other words, you unplug it from power, hold the power button down for 5 seconds, release, and plug everything back in. Much of what we covered in today's webcast is actually covered in a KBase article, HT3964. Also, SMC reset troubleshooting, using it effectively while troubleshooting, can be found in the troubleshooting steps in our newer Apple Technician Guides. So to review, we've defined what the SMC is and what it controls, some related symptoms that you may find that you need to troubleshoot, things that you should do before you reset an SMC, and of course additional resources. So hopefully we have some questions over here with Jeremy, and we're going to turn it on over for your Q&A. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we have two questions here. The first one is, can you give us a bit more information on how the SMC functions?
So the SMC, as mentioned before, is a low-level management controller inside of the computer. It works independently of the operating system, but also in concert with it. And so the goal is that your low-level management of the computer has this seamless experience. As mentioned before, backlight, the status indicator light that's in the front of the machine, battery charging, all these are very low-level functions of the computer. And you expect them to just work. When you plug in the MagSafe adapter, the battery will start charging. You're going to see the indicator in the OS indicate charging. And that's all of what the SMC helps manage independently and with the OS. So all these low-level functions that are the seamless experience of the computer is what the SMC helps to manage.
Great, thank you. So the last question we have here is, are there any specific faults that are unlikely to be an SMC-related problem?
Commonly, many people think you might want to do an SMC reset as a result of getting, say, a kernel panic from the OS. And that's usually the least likely reason you want to do an SMC reset. A kernel panic is often a symptom of other problems of the computer, less likely to be an SMC issue. Therefore, if you have a kernel panic, I think you'd want to follow the steps that were previously mentioned, where an SMC reset ends up being the last action you would take to see if the problem went away. And also, doing an SMC reset, and if you did an SMC reset and the problem did go away, it doesn't necessarily mean that the SMC reset cured the problem. The problem could be a low-level occurrence, or a problem that doesn't happen very much, and therefore the SMC reset just happened to, when you did the SMC reset, the problem happened to go away, but the SMC reset didn't necessarily cure it.
Great. And the last question we have is a product-specific question. But someone says they have noticed an issue on a MacBook Pro where the CPU temperature seems to go very high and the fan speed does not increase to cool it down. Would that be an SMC issue?
It could potentially be. We had, at one point, I'd seen a lot of chatter on the discussion boards about CPU temperatures, and one of the questions that we always ask users is, how are they observing CPU temperature, and also what do they believe is a high CPU temperature? Because when that question comes up, we find that many users don't necessarily know about what a high CPU temperature is, even though it's stated as being a problem. The fact is that the CPU temperatures can be regulated by the CPU. CPU temperatures can go up reasonably high. The SMC controls temperature for the inside of the box and the outside of the box to meet safety limits and to meet user comfort. And it is possible that some higher CPU loads could cause the CPU temperature to go up, but they're going to go back down as they should. It's a nature of the way the SMC works as part of its control system to regulate that. That said, it is possible for a problem to be in the machine itself regarding the assembly, the way the thermal conduction is done in the box. For there to actually be an issue, it would be less likely for it to be an SMC issue more than a fan issue or some other problem that might need to be diagnosed.
All right, well, we're not getting any more questions, so we're going to end it now.